This is Continuum Drag, a weekly podcast revisiting television sci-fi, fantasy, and everything in between. This week, Misfits of Science, episodes 4 and 5.
Logger, he brought the soul of his dead little boy halfway across the world just to send it up on your precious top-secret shuttle. Damn it! That's exactly what he's gonna do. Now, look, if you want us to start tossing lightning bolts or tossing the guns out of your hands, we can do that. That's fine. We might even beat you. We're gonna help Link put that carving on that shuttle. With you or without you.
Welcome to Continuum Drag, the podcast wearing its dignity on the inside. I'm Luke, here's my co-host Jordan. What's real, Jordan?
I've seen it, I've spelled it, and I don't need it.
Wait,
remember that?
Did you spelled it or you smelt it?
Smelt it. What did I say?
I don't know. I wasn't 100% sure.
It's I've seen it, I've smelled it, and I don't need it. That's the line.
Interesting. I don't remember that line at all.
It's when old Courtney Cox goes down into the sewer and she doesn't want to go into the sewer. Yeah. Episode 5. Hey, can I just say something right off the bat?
Yeah?
These are not very good episodes, these two. What do you think?
No?
Do you agree with me?
100%. They're not very good.
All right. I think that's it. We're done.
That's the episode, everybody. See you next week.
That's it. Yeah. Wouldn't that be wonderful? We actually just signed off and everyone's like, oh, it was like 2 minutes.
2 minutes. Bad episodes, eh? Oh, great.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's not what we're doing, so here we go.
No. We're going to go for hours.
Well, I put a little bit together here about the creator of the show, James D. I believe it's Parrott, perhaps?
Mm-hmm. How does he spell it?
Parrott.
Oh, yeah, probably.
Yeah, something like that.
Who cares?
He's actually remarkably prolific for
I know.
For a writer.
I skimmed over before. He's worked on a lot of stuff.
Well, did you see that he's a Continuum Drag claim to fame holder?
Oh no, what is that?
He's directed a show we've watched before.
Can I guess?
Yeah, of course.
Let's say it was. So it's probably in this time period. It's probably early 90s. Late 80s.
It's not.
Yeah.
It's in the 80s.
Oh, it's in the 80s.
Might even be the 70s.
Was it Planet of the Apes?
It is Gemini Man.
Oh, Gemini Man. Oh.
Do you know which episode he directed? Can you guess? Can you remember a Gemini Man episode?
I'm gonna guess it's the one where he had there was two people, like he had a duplicate.
Sam Casey. Sam Casey is the episode he directed.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing! I got that.
It's the only memorable episode of that show, so it's fair.
It is funny. You said that, and I was like, "What's an episode I remember?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, there was one where he played two people, and he kept making out with that woman." Remember?
I do remember. I do.
This show wasn't very good, huh?
I mean, he has quite a long history. Like, he did a bunch of sort of writing through the 70s. I think, sort of from what I could see, his biggest writing gig in the 70s was he did 13 episodes of The Bionic Woman. Mm-hmm. Which maybe is where he cut his teeth. I can't be sure, but like it seems like that's where it was his biggest stretch at the top of his career. But he's been credited with creating 7 different TV series.
That is very impressive.
Before Misfits of Science, he was credited with creating Voyagers! ! A like sort of family kids time travel show.
Yeah.
And then he went on to create a show called Hawaiian Heat.
Yeah. Is Hawaiian Heat like an action show or a cooking show?
It's a cop show.
Yeah.
And then after Misfits of Science, because he did that, he left that, and then he went on to create a show called Forever Night.
Yeah, I know Forever Night. I think it's on our list, deep into our list of something we may watch 10 years from now.
Yeah, keep it in mind because it is a vampire detective in Toronto.
That's right, yeah. It sounds terrible.
And then he did a show called Matt Waters, which was a teacher drama starring Montel Williams.
Wow. You know what's funny? I never, not that one would think of Montel Williams, but I just assumed he only ever had a talk show. I didn't ever kind of think about that he would have had another career as, an actor or whatever.
Yeah, I was trying to picture it too. I'm like, Montel Williams as the teacher of this drama. That's interesting.
You know what Montel Williams seems to do now? Is infomercials where it's like you think it's a TV, like a talk show, but he's actually just like selling you a pill.
A juicer?
Yeah. Well, no, not quite. It's like It's like a pharmaceutical company hoodwinking you.
Yeah. After that, he created a political drama called The American Embassy. And then finally, most recently, like I think this is like 2006 or 9, somewhere in that area, he created a show called Defying Gravity. It's basically Grey's Anatomy in space.
Wow. It's interesting he's created so many shows, but maybe it's just me, but none of them seem like they were like terribly successful shows.
I think Forever Night might be the only one that made it past one season. Maybe Voyagers went a little longer, I'm not sure, but most of them were kind of one and dones.
Right. Regardless, that's a wide variety of TV shows.
He's got a kick at the can a lot of times.
He's probably a really nice guy, which also probably
absolutely.
helps.
I mean, I think that must be the case. He seems to be on a lot of shows. He writes a lot, like he wrote for Grey's Anatomy, so he must like be a guy people like to have in the room.
And Misfits of Science.
And Misfits of Science. Well, that's probably a great lead-in. So here's the IMDb summary for Episode 4, Lost Link. A man who has never left his homeland miraculously travels from one side of the ocean to the next on a wooden raft to reach the space shuttle in time. The Misfits desperately try to help, but he keeps wandering off from them.
You know what? That's pretty accurate.
I think it pinpoints the biggest problem with the episode.
Well, no, there's a lot of problems with this episode. Maybe that is the biggest. Let me just say one thing off the bat. This is called Lost Link. And the assumption I had from the beginning
Me too.
is that this is going to be about your sort of
a Bigfoot.
Yes, like the missing link, as
Yeah.
it were, in the evolutionary chain of events, or whatever you'd call it. But it's not what it is. It's somehow much worse. And what's odd about it is they call him Link, I guess, as if he is the missing link, but there's never any indication that that's what the case is. So I don't know why these scientists would call him that. It's bizarre. It's like, we're going to say right off the bat, he is this is probably the wrong term, but quote unquote, a primitive person, not because he's from the past, but because he's been so isolated in that there's been no connection to modern society. But it's not anything to do with the evolution of man at all.
No. I mean, you're right. They repeatedly call him, quote, a primitive the entire episode.
Yeah, which is like, anyways, this episode's bad. This is a bad episode. We said this before. I would say the first 3 episodes of the show are very fun, and then I hit into this one, and I was like, oh, something's happening now.
Yeah. Well, I mean, as promised by the summary, it starts with a man in a loincloth sailing a wooden raft to a beach in LA somehow.
It's weird because I wasn't sure what was happening at first because it's all kind of shot. I actually thought it was shot pretty well. It's dark. There's someone rowing at night. And then you see he's kind of on the beach and you're not really sure. But it does sort of like a hard cut to like bikini babes and like beach police. Like it's Baywatch Nights or something, and they try to like arrest him.
Yeah, they just see a man on the beach and they're like, arrest that man.
Yeah, but it's like, but there's no indication.
He hasn't done
why.
anything. He's just standing on a beach in a loincloth.
Yeah, which is like no different than a bathing suit, really. It's not like he's like exposing himself.
He's no less dressed than those bikini babes.
Yeah, and later on, by the way, I like when they say we think he's from an island in the Philippines. And what the other doctor that's only going to be in this one episode, she's like, yeah, he sort of looks like he's from the Philippines. I was like, what an amazing ability of research you have at your disposal. He sort of looks like he's from that area, so he must be.
Yeah. I mean, that's the premise. They're like, they discover he's from, I guess, an uncontacted tribe, they think, around the Philippines, who sailed 8,000 miles. It's all such a weird, like, they put no effort into, like, doing any research, but they're just like, this all seems like what we just made up on the spot. We're scientists. That's enough.
So if he was like, it's the equivalent of like, it was a tall, very white person with like blonde hair. You'd be like, well, they must be from Sweden. These must be. You're like, oh, okay.
Well, this is what happens.
Possibly.
Is the police take the man they found on the beach to the only place you would take him, Humanidine.
Yeah, they take him to Humanidine, and then they're like, and that's the first time they're like, I remember because I wrote it in quotes. Billy goes, he's a primitive. I was like, ooh, Billy. But they sort of are doing tests of him, and then I don't understand how this works. There's a couple weird things here. We get a few of the scenes of like how crazy this place is, which they've sort of like peppered through the show.
I will
so
say
far.
that this is maybe the best part of the show, which is like 12 seconds every episode, is they keep just going to Humanityne, and when they get there, it just like all this wacky stuff is happening in the background all the time. Like it's like a really active, crazy place to hang out. Like the episode will always ends up being boring, but like for some reason when you come into Humanityne, it's always weird. And I don't know if you noticed this, but there have been these two test subjects. One guy with a really big beard, like an older guy with a really big beard. Every single episode so far, they've been in the background doing some sort of weird test on these two people, and they're always every episode.
Yeah, I did notice too, because they're like anyways, these two guys, and then there's one is like the guy who can transmit radio signals or something to that effect. Yeah,
there's a gag where it's like a man who just has the radio coming out of his mouth because I guess his fillings or something, and I believe Stepmeyer grabs his head and twists it around and it changes the channel.
Yeah. Anyways, it doesn't mean anything. It's just to show how zany it is. I would agree. It's a good world building thing that they do in this show. But it does make you think like, let's have something fun happen in the lab because you guys look like a lot of fun things are happening.
It looks like you guys have the most fun setting up these lab scenes. You don't seem to have any fun setting up any other scene.
Well, and so let me ask you if this makes sense, Luke. So they do some sort of test on him. We don't really know what they're testing. It's not really clear because like, what would you test? He's just a human. But anyways, then they decide to, am I wrong, put him in a zoo?
You are correct. I believe what happens is, and I am making connections the show does not for us, but my understanding of what happens is based on some filling in the blanks is that Humanityne then transfers Link to the anthropology department of the company, who then decide to place him in a zoo so he can be closer to his natural habitat.
I know, but it's like, but his natural habitat is not, it's not a zoo. Like a zoo is a bad representation of nature. So it's not like he would be more comfortable there. If anything, you would think it would be worse because he's essentially in a cage. He's not essentially in a cage. He is in a cage. But there's also something they add in this episode, and it's only really for kind of a gag beat at the end with Dick, Stetmeyer, old Alf boy, and which is they get like a new boss in this. He's like the heavy.
He is the head of the anthropology department, so they're interfacing with a different deparment, I think is the idea. But like it's so hard to understand. Don't get me wrong. Like,
I thought they just added a guy in like a new police chief sort of deal.
Yeah, I mean, it's so weird. They put him in the zoo. All we kind of learn is he's carrying around this like carving of a little human figure, and he keeps trying to use it to explain things to them, but he can't speak English, obviously, and they don't really understand why he's drawing triangles. They can't really figure out what he wants.
Well, Luke, if you can't communicate with someone, what is the universal language, and how would you best communicate with someone?
There's only one way to communicate with this person is to call up Johnny B to come sing and dance for him, and then they'll both do a dance number together, and then be like, he likes us now.
This is something that this reminded me of like a scene from Encino Man.
It's such a weird. It's just like a little dance sequence. What song is Johnny not saying the lyrics to?
I can't remember, but it's an interesting point you make. I can't remember what the song is, but all of this show has a ton of music and popular songs that you would recognize, but they're obviously re-recorded versions because they can't get the real ones. Like they've had the Beatles in one episode, but it's clearly not the Beatles. But I can't remember what this is. Everything's very like late 1950s, early 1960s. That's the kind of like Johnny B's wheelhouse of rock and roll.
Yeah. Anyways, this sort of brings Link around, even though Link, for some reason, there's like a running gag that Link doesn't like Dr. Billy until the end when they like make up or something. But it's just a weird side plot that Dr. Billy's jealous that Link and Johnny have a better relationship.
Well, and I'm going to make us jump all around because I hate this episode, but he shouldn't like Billy. And did you notice there's something weird in this episode? So we should say there's this is not a serialized show at all, but there's going to be a few elements. And one of them is that Jane is pregnant with Billy's baby, even though they're not together.
I'm not convinced
I think you're right.
Billy's baby, but we'll see what happens.
I think it is Billy's baby, and I think you're right. I think the actress was just pregnant. But what's weird is that they sort of like have this like, well, we're gonna kind of figure out our relationship and stuff, and then later on this episode, he's got like another woman with him.
Does he?
Did you? Yeah, when they have like their little, they go to like the beach thing at the very end.
I thought that was Jane.
No, there's another woman with him. He's like got a date.
I thought that was Jane. Are you sure it wasn't Jane?
100% sure, because Jane is sitting in another chair up higher. She's there beside this other woman, and they don't mention it at all. It's just like, yeah, Billy, he's got another girl. I'm like, he's just made this one pregnant.
Well, that's what's also weird. Like, what kind of happens is the Human Investigations Department is now, I guess, interfacing with the Anthropology Department of Humanityne or something, and this is why we get a new anthropologist character named Deanna to the episode. And she's there to not do much, but I guess provide a little exposition, but also because they want a subplot where Dr. L needs to ask her out because they're getting together this weekend for a thing and he needs a date for it. And like, nothing really happens. It's just like the whole episode is like he just is like standing next to her, giving her googly eyes, and then finally he like asks her out and she accidentally shrinks him to a tiny person, and she gets freaked out. But you know, they go on this date. And my question for you was, this whole date they were setting up all episode, he needed a date for this event. And at the end, you cut to them just sitting on a beach, and the only people there are Dr. Billy with a date. Then apparently Jane's there by herself, Glow's there by herself, Johnny's there by herself, and then Dr. L and Deanna are there on a date. I'm just like, this is what he needed a date for, to sit on this beach with you guys?
It doesn't really make sense. The whole thing is bad. And I'm going to say something, and we don't need to get into this because it's probably not really what this podcast is, but like, I don't know if this is a thing of the times, but it was also really obvious to me that they were going to have to set up a relationship between these two because they're the only people of color.
Yeah.
Is the two doctors. And it's just a weird thing where it's like, well, we already have all these love triangles happening, but we can't have him having another love triangle because he's clearly not the same race. So we'll have to add another character so there can be a relationship that the audience is comfortable with.
I mean, you're almost certainly not wrong.
Yeah. It just smacked of like, there's nothing here I like.
Yeah. I mean, Deanna barely has a character in this, but she's always hanging out with them. She's like the anthropologist they're hanging out with. I really like the setup for her character, though, is because her character is supposed to be this doctor who works for the anthropology department, but she's some sort of rogue anthropologist with questionable methods who's always getting in trouble because the head of the department you mentioned, this like new boss character who can yell at them all episode, is this guy who runs her department, and he essentially acts like a police captain dealing with a rogue cop all episode. Like, she's some sort of rogue anthropologist, and her anthropologist boss is always like, I'm going to take away your badge, Deanna. It's like the weirdest
but we also never
way of
see
handling these characters.
They only, you're right, but it's like a lie in a dialogue. But we never see her actually really do anything until, for all intents and purposes, she's sort of forced to through her connection with the Misfits.
Yeah. I mean, they're just like having fun. I think they're like, oh, this character's like a rogue cop, and her boss is like the police ship, but it doesn't go anywhere. It's just like to have a scene, but like it means nothing because she has no consequence on the episode.
Yeah. Back to the little dancing scene. I just want to really articulate how dumb this is. It's like a whole dance sequence, and it's like literally Johnny is playing music on a harmonica, and they notice that like this character they're gonna call Link starts like tapping his foot. Anyways, it was so dumb. I just want to say, like, it's the dumbest sequence the show has done.
Don't worry, I have clips that I'm going to put on Instagram so everyone can watch.
Good.
At any rate, what happens is they talk to this department head. He finally gives in. He says, okay, I'll let you, the Misfits of Science, go out into the world with Link to try to figure out what he wants. Like, why did he come here? I'll let you wander the city hoping to figure it out.
This is a good point, Luke, because this episode is very confused. Because, here, look, we'll just say what it is. What we there's a little hint at the beginning of the episode, which is we see that he has somehow got a page from a magazine that has a picture of a National Geographic that has a rocket on it. And what we're going to find through the course of the episode is that what he's been trying to articulate to them is that he wants to get a rocket because he wants to put the totem on it because it goes up into the air, and he has some sort of concept of the soul or heaven or God or the afterlife, and he wants this representation or what is carrying his son's soul to go up into the sky. So that
he's seen a space shuttle. He understands what a space shuttle is and how it works, and he wants to place this inside of the space shuttle.
That's basically the plot. Fine. There's actually that's not I think the main problem of this. It's that there's nothing really to get there. So like, why do they take him out into the streets of Hollywood just because. It's like, but how would that ever solve what you were doing? Like, this episode could all take place in the lab where they try to find commonalities in language or ways to communicate. And I know that's maybe not as fun an episode, but the episode they have decided to write, none of the actions make sense.
Yeah, well,
to get to that point.
That's what I mean. They're for some reason allowed to leave the zoo with him. They take him to the diner Glow works at, where he then proceeds to eat coins for some reason. They just give him coins and he eats them. And I'm like, is this? I don't know what this is.
Well, they want all that fish out of water stuff, but it doesn't really. It just doesn't amount to anything.
No.
And also, I'm gonna say he doesn't grow at all as a character. It's not like they're not gonna end up having the thing where like, he's wearing hilarious, like very on point 80s clothing, and he learns, I don't know, he learns sense of humor or something like that. It's just like he's gonna stay this for the whole episode.
Well, he's barely with them is the problem. Like, they, for whatever reason, are like, let's leave the zoo and maybe he'll figure out understand what he wants somehow via, I have no idea what. Like, there's no plan, right? Go to the diner. In the diner, he looks out a window and sees a man wearing a jacket that's got like a space shuttle on the back of the jacket.
Yeah.
Link starts freaking out, jumping on tables, pointing out the window. None of the Misfits look out the window to see what he's pointing at. They're just like, what do you do? Like, they have no interest or curiosity at all.
No, instead, there's the most anticlimactic bar fight ever.
Yeah, some guys get mad that Link's jumping around, so they stand up and be like, this guy jumped on our table. And then, like, Glow and Johnny use their powers to murder them. Who cares?
Yeah. Wouldn't it be great if they actually murdered them?
I mean,
she just rips their heads off their body like it's Mortal Kombat.
And while they're having this like non-bar fight, it takes like nothing happens.
It's like maybe 10 seconds.
Somehow they lose track of, like, there's 7 of them. There's like 7 Misfits. They all lose track of Link, and he gets on a bus to Hollywood.
Yeah.
And then he's just like
Again,
missing. He's just missing for 20 minutes
well,
of the episode.
it's funny. I don't know if I even love the other kind of like broader comedy this could have been, but it just seems like they didn't make the choice of what they wanted it to be. Because if it's going to be this character who is does not know anything about modern society, and that sort of deep well of, wouldn't it be funny if he doesn't know this and does know that? You know, it's Star Trek 4. But that's not even what they want to do. They have this character and they don't know what to do with him, and they don't actually have a clean plot. So they're just like, oh, I guess he'll just go missing for a bit.
Yeah, like we
That's
get
it.
we get a montage of him like wandering around Hollyweird, if you will, Jordan.
Yeah, that's right.
But the montage.
Hey, did you notice, by the way, how in the last 30 years that this show has been, almost 40 years, this show has been off the air, how much cities have changed? Because this is sort of pre this glut of chain restaurants and stores and things. So everything is still, assuming they're filming this in LA, it still looks sort of like cute and almost archaic, because it's still like mom and pop shops, which there's no way that's what it is now. It's all Starbucks and McDonald's and whatever chain stores, you know?
Yeah, I would say that the best part of the montage is just having, it's like the timestamp of seeing LA at a very specific period of time. Because otherwise the montage is pretty uninspired. Like, it's all just like him wandering around. Things that are like vaguely interesting happen, but not even that interesting, until finally he finds a store and he looks in the window and there's like a model of a space shuttle inside. So he runs inside, steals that space shuttle. While this has been happening, we've been cutting back to the Misfits of Science, and like, you know, we're what, 20 minutes into the episode now, so they finally called probation officer Jane to join the episode.
That's, you know, also we should say they've added this new character. I didn't catch what the other doctor's name is. The
Deanna.
Lincoln Deanna. They've brought her in, which is fine, perfectly fine. It's like, but I'm sure you could have rewritten this episode a little bit so maybe Jane had some more dialogue. You've added another character, but given Jane just as little to do.
Jane's whole thing is she's suddenly there and she's like, "Hi everybody, thanks for calling me. I called in a favor with the police department, so now all the police in LA are looking for them. I'm looking for Link." I'm like, I don't see how that would work, but okie dokie.
Yeah, and then she like kind of spends a few scenes driving around with a police officer that apparently is a friend of hers.
Yeah, the Misfits like spend this montage. We just keep coming back to them driving around, doing nothing.
Yeah.
A cop sees Link because he's stolen the space shuttle. They chase after him. Link climbs like this fire escape up the side of a building, and the Misfits like pull up and they're like, "Oh no, he's gonna fall!" And like he drops the space shuttle, and as he falls, Glow uses her like brain powers to like catch him. She mind freaks him so he doesn't die.
I think they've gotten more vague about what her powers are, because what it always seemed was that she had the ability to like kind of like push like with a great force, and sort of like pin people to walls and stuff. But now she can she's essentially like Jean Grey. She can just like levitate and hold
Yeah,
things.
she can kind of manipulate any object with her mind. It seems like that's, I guess, what it is. Who knows though?
Sure,
as required, I'm sure, to the plot.
As required, right? Also, I should say, Lincoln, right? Elvin. He, it's what I think we feared, Luke. There's no reason for his powers. So now, what I think in these 2 episodes, the only time he really shrinks, I think, with maybe one exception of it being like part of a plot, is like it's an accidental thing, and it's like, isn't it hilarious?
And so twice he accidentally shrinks to freak someone out.
Yeah, it's like because they don't know because they're like, we need to remind the audience he has a power that is useless.
At any rate, they've saved Link from falling, except that angry head of the anthropology department pulls up in his own cop car for why is he in his own cop car? Who knows? He confiscates Link to bring back to the zoo because the Misfits are in trouble or something. And this is what's driving me insane. It's like, so the whole episode is like they don't know what to do, what Link wants. They have no idea. Yeah. So they just take him to wander the city at random. When they finally catch up with him, they watch him drop something. I'll grant that maybe they can't see he's holding a model of the space shuttle, but he drops it off the side of the building before he falls. It breaks to pieces on the ground, but it's still clearly recognizable as a space shuttle. But the Misfits of Science have zero curiosity about anything, do not investigate the thing they saw him drop, do not see anything. They just watch Link get dragged out, and they're like, well, we still have no idea what he wanted. And like, it takes us 30 minutes for them to even like vaguely figure out what he wants. So we're just like, we have 30 minutes of the entire plot being like, I wonder what this guy wants.
Yeah, and it's this weird thing where, sometimes you have in television where the viewer knows more than the characters, and you have to wait for them to sort of catch up. And sometimes and I think usually it's better if you kind of learn along the way with the characters. It's sort of revealed as time goes on. I think it's harder to have impact when you're waiting for the characters to catch up. And this is a perfect example of it done poorly, which is we know from one of the very first scenes what he's looking for, and there's no real inciting incidents that will get us, and there's no real conflict that will get the characters to where we need to get. So we're just waiting for them to kind of fumble around.
It's very frustrating. It just gets very frustrating because they've had a few opportunities to understand what he wants, and every time they like the joke, I guess, is they always miss what he's pointing at or miss the message he's giving them. But it just becomes very frustrating as an audience member.
Yeah.
I mean, ultimately what happens is they end up back at the zoo. I'm going to give it this to the actor playing Link. I actually think he handles this final scene where he finally explains to them what he wants really well. And only because this is like a very difficult scene, I think, to do for any actor. But like, he back at the zoo, he sees pregnant Jane, touches her belly, and then using non-verbally, he explains via basically
movement.
I don't know, what would you call it? What's that game you play where you have to act out scenes?
Charades?
Charades. He basically charades out a scene where he was busy working at home. His child came to visit him. He told his child he was busy and kind of told her to leave. And the kid ended up drowning in a river, and he never found the body. And that's why he's here, is to take this carving of his child's soul to like get it to heaven. And the actor like acts this out. And it's a bit silly, I won't deny, but I actually thought the actor did a surprisingly pathos-ridden job of it.
I agree with you. This is, if there's a thankless role, it's this role, because it's you have to it's a lot of like big acting and stuff, and I agree. I think the actor did a very good job with the material he was given, and the material is bad.
Yeah, I was surprised how much empathy I had for him during that sequence. Anyway, so now the Misfits have figured out why he has that sculpture, that carving he's done, and he just keeps drawing triangles. And then as he's doing it, they're like, well, we still don't know what he wants. He wants to do something with his dead son's soul. Then Billy out of nowhere is just like, I've got an idea. And he just pulls out the day's paper and holds it in front of Link. And it's got a big picture of the space shuttle on it, because the space shuttle is apparently in LA getting ready to be transported to Florida. And, Link's like, that's it. He points at the thing. They're like, well, we figured it out. He wants to put it on the space shuttle. I'm just like, how did you guys, like, you were given no information to like point you towards the space shuttle. You just kind of like, we're random, like, we have to end this. We have to have them figure it out.
Yeah. And you're right, though. It's odd, though, because there's been many moments in the episode where this information could have weirdly more easily presented itself to the audience and to the characters to learn, but they were just like, meh,
Ran out of time.
just jamming it later.
Anyway, obviously the anthropology department head won't let them leave again, and we get what begins as a classic scene where finally like their nebbish like boss Dick Stettmeyer finally stands up for them and says, you know, he kind of gives a speech about how if it was his son who had died and he wanted to get assaulted, like he would do this. So like, you know, it's that classic scene where you're like, oh, they're kind of nebbish boss is standing up for them and helping them get what they want. That takes such an odd turn as he stands up to this department head. And then Dick Stettmeyer's like, all right, strip him and tie him up. I was just like, excuse me?
Yeah, there's a couple things. One, as you're saying, this is way too far for what they need, because they've already said, like, we're not going to listen to you. We're going to do what we want to do. Great. They've accomplished it. But they somehow, this guy has so much power, or they're so worried about him, that they have to tie him up and, like, gag him, which seems that it would present a lot of problems later on. But what I like, though, is that when he's doing this, Dick then says to Billy at one point, he goes, just so you know, like, to this effect, he's like, just so you know, this is off hours. This is me doing it. This isn't like company policy. And I was like, oh, so that makes it okay? Yeah. It's like he wants them to know that he knows he's doing something bad, but he's not doing it on company time.
Yeah, don't expect this to happen every day. I'm not going to strip a man and tie him up every day.
Yeah. I mean, that's going to make some awkward meetings later on.
It was very funny. And what kind of happens, you know, obviously they take Link, they run off, they jump in the ice cream truck and head toward the airfield. And we keep cutting back to Dick with this guy tied up in his office. And Dick is like calling the Air Force Base, just be like, hey, the Misfits of Science are on their way. They just need to put something on your space shuttle. And like the head of command, this military guy at the space shuttle place is just like, we'll shoot them on sight. And we're like, what? It's just like
this whole thing was weird though. It was just like, why would let's say it's NASA. I don't know, it's the military, but let's say the military, whoever it is. Why would they say yes to this? It's just some random science lab going, hey, we want to put something on your rocket. And now I'm not saying the response should be we're going to shoot you down, but they should be like, sorry, there's a process of that you need to go through to speak to someone who can possibly take your request for reasons.
I mean, my assumption was that like, and they kind of use this as like Humanidyne clearly works a lot with the military, and like he kind of implies they're using some of their technology on the space shuttle, and that's why they maybe should listen to him on the phone. Like, which is, you know, already nebulous. Just like, it's a pretty big request to randomly call this guy up with. But then for that guy's response to be like, we will murder them the second we see them. I was like, yeah. What? And then,
and it's to add this sort of like tension at the end of the episode. But it's just, honestly, none of this works. Nothing in this episode works.
What's great though is like, basically that's what Dick gets. He gets, I've sent the Misfits to die. That's what he thinks has happened.
Yeah.
So when we cut back to him next, he has untied the head of the anthropology department, who has gotten redressed and clothes from wherever. The head of the anthropology department, not angry, not upset in any way. He's just like, Dick, calm down. Let's just call the state like patrol to have them warn the Misfits on their drive. I was just like, this guy should be livid. He was stripped and tied to a chair. He seems to be over it so fast.
Yeah. I mean, if I was ever in a scenario where a colleague tied me up, like bound and gagged me, I wouldn't be that cool with it afterwards.
It raises a lot of questions. Whatever, none of it matters. The Misfits arrive at the airfield. The guard won't let them in. So they're like, we need a new plan. They set it taking like there's only 47 minutes before the shuttle leaves in the back of that plane to go to Florida. I'm like, okay.
Yeah. It's like, I don't know, go find it in Florida.
And Billy's like, we need a plan to get us in there. What if L shrunk down to a tiny size? We put him inside a large manila envelope, and then on the manila envelope I wrote, to the commander of the Air Force Base, and we asked the guard to deliver this envelope to the commander.
Yeah, so their plan was to save time. We'll put him in the envelope. He'll get there, grow, and then he'll be able to say, don't shoot them. We need to put a totem on the aircraft. That's the plan.
Well, they don't even know they're going to shoot them. I think they're hoping that, like, the guard delivers the envelope, he opens it, and then a tiny L comes out and explains what they need, and he says, oh, I understand. Yes, of course. Please come to the space shuttle.
It's such a bad episode.
But as soon as they give the envelope away, they see a cop car drive by and turn around. They're immediately just like, uh-oh, the cops must be out to get us. And this is backed up because in the ice cream truck, they're listening to the radio, just like the regular old radio. Music's playing, the news is on. A broadcaster cuts in to say, news is reporting that the Misfits of Science are on their way to stop the space shuttle. And I'm just like, who's reporting this to the news?
Maybe it's what's his face. He was being all nice to Dick, this anthropology guy, and maybe he called the radio station.
Yeah, I guess so. So they all get freaked out. They all jump inside the ice cream truck and like drive off to have a car chase with the cops. And once again, there's like 5 or 6 people involved in the Misfits of Science in this episode. They all pile into this truck, drive off, except not a single one of them looked to see if Link was with them. They've left Link behind, and he's like, well, I'm gonna jump the fence. I see the space shuttle, so see you guys later. So he just got a giant, stupid car chase with the cops in this ice cream truck until they're like, uh-oh, Link's not with us. Turn around.
The only thing I like about that, I don't know if you saw the one shot, that truck at one point does like a real turn.
Yes.
And it came so close to flipping over.
It's so funny because I agree. Like, it almost flipped over, and like they turn around and they'll like crash the gates of the military base. They'll just like drive through the gates, and then like all the military will start shooting at them. And all I kept thinking, I'm just like, Jane's on that, and she's pregnant. Like, you're jeopardizing this pregnant woman so badly right now.
Yeah.
But the whole thing is they drive onto the base. They're trying to like get to Link. The military's shooting at them because I guess they are going to open fire if they see them. Finally, back in command center, the military guy won't pick up his envelope. It's just left on his chair for some reason. They keep doing gags where he almost sits on L because L just like sits in the envelope. Yeah. But finally time runs out, so L grows. Which, doesn't he stay that way for an hour? I don't know. An hour passes. He grows.
This is interesting. They in these next 2 episodes, this and the next one, they fiddle a little bit and bend the rules as to how long he's small for because of plot convenience.
Yeah, maybe he's only small for 14 minutes, whatever. He grows to giant size finally, so now there's this like giant naked man in the middle of the base, and they're like, what do you want? Cut to L and this like military general, whoever he is, they're pulling up in a Jeep, stopping the army from shooting anymore at the ice cream truck. But they're like, arrest all the Misfits of Science, arrest Link, arrest them all. And like Dr. Billy gives a big impassioned speech which would never convince anyone of anything, but it moves the general so much that he's like, all right, give me your carving, I'll put it on the space shuttle.
Then there's another weird thing. I don't know if it's right here, Luke, or it's in a couple scenes, but we see a news broadcast, like part of the news is showing, and it mentions, well, there's one funny little timestamp because they mentioned Star Wars, which is one of my favorite Reagan era things. But
that's the reveal at the end to let you know it worked, is that there's a newscast going on about this space shuttle that launched, that its payload was 3 Star Wars satellites they were putting into orbit. I was like, what?
Yeah, that, and they're like, and there was a totem, but the military won't mention why they had a totem on it. I'm like, well, how would you have ever known?
Yeah, the news knows they put this carving, this human, they have a photo of it, and they put it into orbit. Although the best gag is that at the end of it, they're like, and now the Soviets are accusing the USA of, quote, using outer space voodoo.
Yeah, sure.
Cold War, you guys, it's hilarious.
And then they have, as we said, they have their sort of like picnic on the beach, and that's the end of the episode. Now, I have a question for you. They seem to be a scene missing though, because they go like, oh, and Link sailed back.
That's the thing. There isn't a scene missing. It cuts that party, and then they hard cut to Link in the middle of the ocean on his boat, and I was just like, you guys didn't fly him home? You put him back on that boat and pushed him into the ocean?
Yeah. He's just like, well, I'll put all that behind me.
He died on the way back, by the way. That's
guaranteed.
Like, and he died.
Yeah. Bad episode.
A miracle he survived the trip over, and the Misfits plan is like, well, here's your boat. Good luck.
Well, they're like, hey, we don't have a boat. We only have the ice cream truck. We can't help you.
Fuck. This episode, man. Oh, my God.
It's so bad.
Here's the IMDb summary for episode 5. Sort of looking for Gina.
Really, this Brigantine Antoinette exhibit is very important to the board. You understand that it was Humanidine Diving Bell that recovered the treasure. It's more than a special project for me, Billy. This is more than a job.
Oh, it sounds like a job for the police, Richard. Why don't you give them a call?
My party, Billy, the reception will be ruined tonight. I'll have insurance underwriters all over me. The papers will make a field day of it. How will that look?
I love it. Sunken treasure jewel exhibit monstrous.
Johnny is fascinated by a woman he's met, Gina. but whenever he meets her, she disappears when he's not looking. At the same time, some of the Misfits believe to have seen a monster in the sewer system. So all of them go down again to investigate.
Sorry, give me that one sentence again.
Which one?
He's looking for her. It was very choppy there. I want to hear that sentence again.
It was my fault. I believe it was. But a woman he's met, Gina, but whenever he meets her, she disappears when he's not looking.
I see. Okay. Anyways, here's the thing. This would be a very hard synopsis to write because it's another. Look, this is not a good episode. I'm going to argue it's marginally better than the other one. I'm not even sure why, but in some ways, this is more of a mess of an episode. Nothing makes sense, and you don't understand what anyone's motivations are.
I was listening to a different podcast because that's what I do. I listen to podcasts apparently, and someone on it mentioned the concept of an and then script, where the script is written just like and then, and then, and then, and that's what this feels. It's like just like nothing ties into each other. Just like and then something happens, and then something else happens.
Yeah, and it seems like this one in particular, as in comparison to the previous episode, there's a lot of elements, and someone gave very little thought as to how they would connect. Because what the basic things we're going to get is there's a mysterious woman who seems to be, for all intents and purposes, following Johnny, that he doesn't understand. He can never kind of like find her. There's also perhaps people living in the sewer. There's also like a jewel heist kind of happening.
Sewer monsters.
And like a sewer monster type thing. And all of this is supposed to kind of come together in the end, but in the least creative, most clumsy way you could do it.
Yeah. I mean, the setup is that at this maritime museum in LA, the Humanityne board is hosting an exhibition and party for the discovery of the Antoinette's sunken treasure, a treasure said to be worth $30 million.
Right.
In the beginning of the episode, what we see is that they are having special security lasers set up to protect the treasure. And we see two of the installers have gone into the sewers underneath the museum. They sense something strange is in the sewers with them. So they light a match to have a look. The match then causes an explosion to happen. Mm-hmm. The workers aren't killed somehow. It's unclear how that could be possible based on the explosion. But what they report back is there is a mole monster living in the sewers.
Right. And does this make any sense?
I mean, when we finally get to the end of the episode, absolutely not.
Right. Okay, that was the thing. So it's just like, and it's weird because this almost feels like the beginning in some ways to a show we watched not too long ago, which was Kolchak. I don't know why I say that. Kolchak. Where it's sort of like something kind of weird happens and you know it's going to be a kind of a monster of the week, and there be, I mean, if it's Kolchak, probably something offensive to another culture, and you'd be like, oh, it's Japanese people have a mole that is well known in their mythology. But this is like, it doesn't amount to anything.
Here's the thing. This is the setup. It's like mole monster in the sewer, which, you know what? That's a good Misfits of Science episode. No spoilers, but by the end of the episode, you'll find out was never a monster anywhere, and they give up on the monster idea like so quickly. This is followed by a second setup, which you mentioned already, sort of, but we see Johnny B. Apparently, he has a new band. They're practicing their new song at the rehearsal space. This like Gina woman, this strange woman appears. She watches them perform. Her and Johnny keep giving each other the eyes. It's a real like will they won't they meet cute. Johnny ends the song, goes to talk to her, and she disappears into a manhole cover. And immediately I'm just like, okay, there's some sort of shape-shifting mole monsters in the sewer.
Yeah, I thought the exact same thing.
Not even remotely what's happening.
No. And let me just take us off course for a minute. It became clear to me at this episode that I don't know if the writers and the people involved behind the scenes know what the goal of the Misfits of Science is.
No.
Is it sort of like using another show we've watched before? Is it like Freaky Links? Are they just there to investigate weird things? Are they here to save the world like superheroes? Is it to answer odd science questions in a kind of fun sort of way? I'm not sure what the hope is anymore for this team.
No, I mean, I couldn't tell you either. Like, we can get into it more at the end, but I would say that all of these episodes feel like templates for an episode. You could have like subbed Matlock into one. You could have subbed You could have subbed the Golden Girls. Like they're just like a plot that you could have put any number of shows into. It just happens like, oh well, we're gonna use this plot for Misfits of Science, so like wedge these characters in. Like it doesn't matter what they do. It doesn't matter what their powers are or their specialties. They're just gonna solve this basic mystery by the end.
Right, but I'll give them this credit. It's never paint by numbers in the way some of these shows go. Like it's not like every episode feels the same. Every episode feels very different. But you're right. It doesn't necessarily feel like a different Misfits of Science episode. It feels like you're watching a different television show with these characters kind of bouncing around.
Yeah, well, you can't paint by numbers when you have literally no engine for what your stories are.
Exactly, right. Yeah.
At any rate, Dick Stettmeyer has been in charge of this like museum gala by the board of directors, so he's trying to make sure it goes off without a hitch. And because the workers told him about the mole monster, he calls up the Misfits to come into this, check out the sewers, and make sure there's no mole monster down there. This, once again, is they come with a lot of equipment, like they're carrying backpacks. They got all kinds of weird, like, blinking light equipment with them.
They look like the Ghostbusters.
Very much like the scene in the library from Ghostbusters. That's exactly what they look like.
Yeah.
They head into the sewers, the whole gang. They're looking around. There's this weird, they trip a wire, and this, like, clown mannequin falls from the roof.
I didn't understand this.
It happened randomly. I don't really know what it means to the episode, but, like, a clown mannequin falls, and we see for the first time that Glow gets scared, uses her mind powers to explode the mannequin. So she can explode a human being.
No, I don't think that's what happened, Luke. I think we may have just watched this scene differently, and I'm not saying I'm right, but what I saw that as, it was some sort of explosive booby trap.
No, because what happens, it falls, and they cut to her, and they do the
yeah, I know.
thing. She exploded it.
Well, that's what I mean. I think she, like, blew it up before they touched it. I think it had explosives in it.
Oh, I don't think so. I think it was just a scare. I think it was just like a scarecrow.
All right. Well, either way, she blew it up.
Yeah, I think
here's the thing. It doesn't matter what
people to explode.
We have two different interpretations. Neither one matters because there's no explanation as to why this clown is there.
As they keep walking through the sewers, they notice the air is getting bad. They're like getting really lightheaded, having trouble breathing. But they're like, well, let's take a sample and just keep walking through the sewer.
Yeah.
And eventually they find a child, like a child, sleeping on a dirty mattress in the sewers. They go to wake the child up. This child is scared. The child starts to run away from them. The child then proceeds to run straight into a wall and knock itself unconscious.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's supposed to be the gas, but that is what it looks like.
I mean, yeah, this little kid, he just runs into a wall and just knocks himself out. They come out of the sewers with the kid, call an ambulance. The ambulance takes the kid away. Johnny looks up. He sees Gina is watching the scene, so he chases after her once again. It's like, I'm going to go talk to this Gina lady I keep seeing. This time he does catch up to her. She's just weirdly standoffish with him, even though she knows everything about him. And then she's just like, well, if you'll pay for the bus fare, why don't we go on a shopping date? And that's what they do. They just do a shopping montage.
Well, and it's also weird because you're right. She's standoffish, which is odd because she has been going out of her way to watch him, like, perform and practice and things. But I think it's supposed to have this turn of, like, he charms her and so she lets down her defenses. But that's not what we see. She's just like, will you pay for my bus? And he's like, yep. She's like, all right, shopping time. I was like, okay, so they're now together?
Yeah, it was weird because there's no real sense of what's happening. Like, they go shopping. It seems like Johnny's buying everything for her. So, like, I'm like, is she scamming him? And then as soon as he turns around to buy her ice cream, she, like, once again just disappears. And he's like, where did she go?
Yeah.
Where she goes is she shows up at the hospital because she wants to, like, check in and make sure that kid from the sewer is okay. And we're not going to talk about a lot about this stuff, but, like, the kid from the sewer, his only personality trait is he wears a Walkman and just listens to music all the time. Mm-hmm. So when she shows up at the hospital, she's like, I brought the kid from the sewers a gift, and hands the nurse a full record. And I'm just like, what is he going to do with a record? I don't understand.
Maybe down in the sewer he's got a record player. The really point of this is that you as a viewer are supposed to know that
they're connected.
Clearly there's a connection between what was her name? Susie?
Gina.
Sort
of looking for Gina, Jordan.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. I know. Gina and this boy, there's a connection, and it's clear there's a bunch of, like, runaway types that are now living in the sewer. Like,
well, it's not clear at all. They just say that out loud. They're like, what if there are more living in the sewer? I'm like, what do you mean?
Right.
how are you anticipating this idea? It doesn't matter. She does that. She's at the hospital, and we know she probably lives in the sewer because she like tricks the nurse into giving her a shower. So,
well, she doesn't trick the nurse into giving her a shower. She
giving her
tells
access to a shower.
Access to a shower. That's right.
Anyway, we cut back to the museum, and this has been happening this whole episode. I'm just only gonna bring it up all now because it's like this is the like fifth or sixth plot that's happening concurrently in this episode. At the museum, it turns out there's an Australian man and his crew who are the ones who found the sunken treasure. This Australian man spent $50,000 diving and like digging up this treasure.
Yeah.
He's just like he's spent all his years of his life and a lot of money to get the treasure out of the ocean. But what he's discovered is since he's got the treasure, it is worth $30 million, but the government will not allow him to sell it because it's antiquities. So he found $30 million, but he's not allowed to profit off of it. He can only show it in this gala museum, and he's upset about that. So what's been happening is him and his crew have started flooding these sewers underneath the museum with methane. That was the bad air they smelled earlier, because their plan is to, during the gala, explode several city blocks to cause a distraction while they go in and steal all of the treasure back. The treasure that they own, they're going to steal so that they can A, get the insurance money for, and B, resell it for $30 million.
Yeah, which is obviously there's problems with this, but it's such a complicated plan that the episode gives almost no time to. Yeah. Like what you've just said is more of an explanation than the episode gives you, because you're like, what is his plan? Why is he doing this? Because you know he's a bad guy right off the bat.
This plan is parsed out in like 30-second chunks over the course of the entire episode where this Australian man just pops up. Like it is like the fifth or sixth plot that's happening concurrently. Also, Jordan, I looked it up because they mentioned it briefly in the episode. They're like, just like Fairfax. I'm like, pardon me, just like Fairfax? And apparently in 1985 in Fairfax in LA, there was a methane leak in the sewers that exploded and like blew up a city block. And so they're like, what if that, but in our episode?
Also, I should say, I remember reading a book once about sunken treasure, and I know it's changed the laws now, but it used to be that essentially it was finders keepers. Right. And there was a bit of that happening. And I don't know what the time period is. I actually think it was in the 90s where that changed. So I have a feeling, and I could be wrong, someone who knows more about a sunken treasure could correct me, but I don't think this is correct.
So what you're saying is a lawmaker watched this episode of Misfits of Science, said, we should have a law about that, and put it into place?
Exactly, yeah. But I think it's his. If he spent all this money, he went down and put in a dive team and rescued all this treasure. I'm pretty sure in 1986 it would be his.
Government says no, Jordan.
I know it's changed now. Like if you're off of the coast of wherever, let's say you're in the Bahamas, and that government would have claim to that treasure.
Right. At any rate,
it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
None of this matters. Like around this time of the episode, Dr. L, who took that sample of the bad air in the sewers, he does a test on it where he lights it on fire and it explodes, and he's just like, it's methane. So they figured out like the sewers are filling with methane.
By the way, I love how long it took him to figure out it's methane. I was like, that should have been an easy test for a scientist in a lab.
Yeah, and it's so funny. The test he runs is like he puts it in like a case and then he explodes it. He's like, it exploded. It's methane.
Yeah.
Also, how could he have taken that much air? None of it makes sense. Doesn't matter. The Misfits have also, as you said, because they met this one sewer kid, they're like, I bet you there's more sewer kids. We got to go down to the sewers and rescue all the sewer kids from the methane.
Yeah.
And so to do that, they're like, there's only one way we can get into the sewers, not through any manhole cover anywhere in that area. We have to crash the gala party that we've not been invited to, so you can do a real slobs versus snobs sequence, so that we can go into the basement of the museum and then re-enter the sewers. There's no reason they have to do this. They just want this scene.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we get this like weird scene where Jane and Gloria are there at this kind of fancy party, and someone makes a comment about her like maternity clothes, and so Gloria pulls down the woman's zipper on her dress as a like punishment.
Yeah, none of it makes sense. Like that's the thing. They get to this party, they essentially crash it, and we've seen them crash it because they're there to get into the sewers to rescue sewer kids. We then get 5 straight minutes where they just hang out at the party eating hors d'oeuvres. Like you said, they do this non-prank where, Lady's rude, so Glow like unzips her dress a little bit. Like I was like, okay, well her dress is gonna fall off later, and that's gonna be her comeuppance. Nope. Never happens. She just a little bit. That lady's dress got slightly unzipped.
And they have at least 3 scenes where Billy discusses eating caviar and is trying to steal food. I was like, but to what end? What is the point of this?
They're supposed to be rescuing sewer children. They spend they get to the party and they just decide they're gonna have drinks. They give up on the sewer children immediately.
Yeah, and we keep cutting back to Dick, who's very proud of this exhibit, and he just keeps being like, "Where's Buckner? I think his name is. Where is he? He's gone.
Where's the
He's
Australian guy? Where'd he go? I hope he's not robbing the place." Anyway, the Misfits
also,
are doing
by the way,
this.
Don't you think it would be better if they had somehow go, okay, there's homeless children or children that have had things happen, so they've banded together to kind of create a family, and they happen to live in the sewer. And this Australian guy is somehow using them to rob the thing. Doesn't that seem better?
Yeah,
because
that
these two
ties
things
the
don't
plots together.
It just doesn't work at all the way they've done it. I'm like, but why are there kids in the sewer? They're just like, because. Like, does it help the plot? No.
Hey Jordan, we haven't talked about it in a while, but Johnny B's been on his own plot for like 20 minutes of this episode. After Gina left him on his fashion date, he has been in the sewers randomly walking around for 20 minutes. We just keep cutting back to him just walking through the sewers.
Yeah. And he's getting sicker and sicker as it goes.
Yeah. Finally, he bumps into the Australians in gas masks and sees them like poison it. Like they're filling the tubes up with like canisters of methane that they're filling sewers up. They get in a fight. Johnny B gets knocked out unconscious, and they're like, "What do we do?" They're like, "I guess we just leave him to die in the explosion."
Yeah, but conveniently for him, the kids find him, bring him back to their lair, as it was.
Yeah, this is our way of seeing there are more sewer children. Johnny B is rescued by them. We get to see their sewer hangout.
Yeah, they're the Ninja Turtles. And I should say, it's not that bad looking for living in a sewer.
No, they did a nice job. They dressed it up quite nicely.
Yeah. I have a question though. Later on, Johnny's going to, because they're like, you're taking in too much methane, and he's like, I can handle it, don't worry. And it's something we haven't seen in a while, which is his super speed, and he rushes through, but like kind of to no effect. Like he still gets sick, but also, why didn't he do that earlier? If he knew he was getting sick, why was he just lounging around? Like, why didn't you use that power?
I don't know. Well, that's the thing. He meets these sewer kids, and they're like, yeah, we're hiding in our hangout because the rest of the sewers are poisonous except in here, so we're just hiding in here until it goes away. And then Johnny's like, oh, it's leaking in here too, so let me like rush out of here and get you help. And so he runs off, and he's just once again just running around the sewers.
And let me say, he finds what I thought was like an explosive device. Like he finds like a little thing with a timer, and he's like, oh, hey, this shouldn't be here. He takes one. Then you see a series of him finding like multiple of these, but later on the explosion's going to happen. So I'm like, did he just get a few of them? Is that what we're supposed to?
There's just so many he couldn't pick them all up.
So why even have that?
So I have no idea. I couldn't.
Do you know what I mean? It's like why
you.
take the time to show him defusing 10 of the 100 bombs? Why? What does it matter? He didn't solve anything.
I don't know. You needed more runtime.
It's so bad.
They back at the party, the Misfits are still doing absolutely nothing, and they happen to bump into Gina, who's also crashed the party to, I guess, steal hors d'oeuvres for the sewer kids. I guess that's the idea. And they have to like ask her for her help to rescue the kids. So they're like, they've been at this party for like 45 minutes. And they're like, oh yeah, we're supposed to save those kids. Let's ask Gina to help us. They head into the sewers where they bump into Johnny as he's making his way out. And they're like, oh, we know where the kids are. We've got gas. Like Johnny's plot had no purpose. They're like, well, let's go back, give these kids gas masks. They walk the kids out of the sewers, and like there's this side thing where like Glow and Dr. L and Dr. Billy split off, and they're like, we need to find a way for the explosion to happen but vent so it doesn't blow up the streets. And they're like, they have to like shrink L down to put him in this room so he can open a door for them. So that I can't like. Their plan is like, if we open this door, when the methane explodes, it will only explode out of a fountain. And I'm just like, that's not how that would work.
They were like, we haven't used L's powers. We need to do the same thing he did, and I think it was the first episode, which is shrink him to get him through a doorway so he can open it. But it's to no result, because then Glow, because again, she's overpowered. She just opens the doors with her power. So I'm like,
well, her powers weren't strong enough. He needed to slightly open the doors ajar. I think, it's so dumb. All of it's dumb. So they do that so that when it explodes, the street won't be damaged because the explosion will just like quietly be forced out of a. It doesn't make any sense. They get the kids out, and as they're getting the kids out, and they've opened up this vent so that it'll explode out the stupid fountain. Johnny looks around. He's like, "Where's Gina?" And one of the kids like, "Oh yeah, well we were in the sewer. She said she was gonna not take a gas mask and go get her bag from the hangout."
Sure.
And it's just so that Johnny has to rush back and save her from the methane. And like, it's kind of the best part of the show, and which is kind of a weak thing to say to begin with. But he like scoops her up in his arms just as the explosion goes off, and he has to like lightning run. So what we see is him outrunning the explosion, which is fun. That's a good use of his powers, but it's, you know, there's no tension to it.
And let me say real quick, you know, of these two episodes, I think they both have a problem with urgency. Like there's like, you're supposed to feel there's this momentum, but which episode do you think's worse? In terms of like that sort of like, hey, we got to get there. Like the viewer's like, are they going to make it in time? You know?
I mean, I think probably Space Shuttle was less. Like I didn't feel any pressure on that one. At least this one like has the idea an explosion's going to happen.
Fair enough. I think you're probably right.
If I had to, pick Jordan.
It's right. It's like, would I rather have diarrhea or vomit?
And if you're wondering what the evil Australians were up to, they're dressed up as firefighters so that when the explosion goes off, they can go in and steal all the stuff. But when they arrive at the evacuated museum, for some reason, only Dick Stepmeyer has not left. He's just hung out after everyone's been evacuated. They're like, well, we're going to have to kill you now, Dick Stepmeyer, because you're trying to, you know, we're the people who found the treasure and we're also stealing the treasure. I think they like tell their whole plan to him. And then Dr. Billy just appears at random. He's like, I found a spear gun. You're under arrest. Yep. And I guess they're under, we never see it again. They're just like, well, I guess that solved that.
And then we get sort of as happens in these episodes, we have like a little button at the end, which is...
Hold on. Before we get into this button at the end, Jordan, I haven't talked about it because it is the 17th plot of this episode, but there is another running plot that ties this whole episode together from the beginning to the end. And I'm going to describe it to you now, Jordan. We'll see how well you remember this part of the plot. This is set up right at the beginning. Humanidyne is having a company picnic. The employees who work at Humanidyne need to sell tickets to the company barbecue to the general public. For each ticket an employee sells, that employee earns one entry into a raffle to win a trip to Hawaii. So the entire episode, Dr. Billy has been trying to sell tickets to the company barbecue to anyone he meets because he's in direct competition with Human Investigation Team's secretary, Nance, who is better at selling tickets than him, but he wants that trip to Australia. So this is running throughout the entire episode, this concept. So in this final button, what we see is they all get back together at the lab. They're all celebrating the victory they had. We get told that Gina has been made the director. I've got it written down here. She's been made. I've written it down because it's so insane. Gina, the sewer child, has been made the director of experimental projects with street kids. I guess, sure, why not?
It's weird because one, they think the viewer is so invested that you're like, well, what happens to Gina now? It's like no one cares. No one cares what happens to Gina as a viewer. You could kill her. I could care less.
The director of special projects with street kids. I don't know what that means. Doesn't matter. They're all headed off to the company barbecue they've all been selling tickets to, which I don't understand how that even works. Why would you sell tickets to I don't understand. Doesn't matter. And Dr. Billy is sad and pouty because he did not win the trip to Australia. And the secretary, Nance, walks by, and Dr. Billy's like, Nance, you won fair and square. Will you take me to Australia with you? And she's like, sorry, I can't. I'm already taking, she says, Barry and Herb. And he's like, but there are only 2 tickets to Australia. How can you bring 2 guests? And he's like, wait, isn't Herb the Invisible Man? And we're left, I guess, to laugh so hard at this concept.
Yeah. That's it.
I don't, like, so, I'm going to say this really quickly. So here's what's happening this episode. 1, is it mole men? No. Second plot. It's street kids who live in the sewer. We have to rescue street kids. All right, great. That's a plot. Next plot. Australians want to blow up the city streets to steal treasure. All right, that's another plot. Fine, whatever. Next plot. Johnny wants to get together with this Gina lady who keeps watching him. Okay, there's another plot. And then we're like, Dick Stepmeyer has to run a gala. There's another plot. And then it's just like, we have to do a barbecue to sell tickets to win Hawaii ticket. Like, all of these things are happening simultaneously in the weirdest, most unconnected ways.
Well, that's the most important part. There's nothing wrong with having complications, but you shouldn't notice them as a viewer. And none of these connect in any sort of meaningful way. So you're just like, what? And it's just like scene after scene of like cutting back and forth. You're like, now Gina's running. Now we're under the ground with gas. And now Dick is worried about his sushi. And you're like, what is happening in this episode? It's such a mess.
It's so convoluted. It's just so convoluted.
Yeah. And that's pretty much it. So yeah, isn't it hilarious? She went with her boyfriend and an extra guy who's invisible. There you go.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't talked about it, but like each episode they keep referencing there's an invisible man who like is always there that we can't, like, he has x-rays but we can't tell if they work.
He's invisible.
Was he standing in the right place? And like, I don't know. Who cares?
Yeah, and that's it. I mean, I'll tell you, I hope this is just a dip and the next few episodes are better, because I thought episodes 1 through 3 were pretty decent, especially the pilot. And man, these are bad.
That's probably a good time then, Jordan. What do you want to rate Lost Link?
Well, I'm not going to rate it high. And let me just say something. I know this show isn't interested in making a comment or really developing any major ideas. It's supposed to be a fun time. I get that. So you don't want to criticize it for that. But it seems odd to have an episode, and I'll use their term, to have this sort of primitive person and not have it really be about humanity as a whole, about where we were, where we're going, where we are now.
Communication,
everything about it. They're not interested in that at all. It's just like, it's so fluffy and so dumb that it's just, I'll tell you, I will never remember this episode. I'm going to forget about it this week and never think about it again. 2 out of 10.
2 out of 10. Yeah, I mean, it has almost the exact opposite problem of the next episode. Like, it has so little going on that they just have to like most of the episode is based around like they've lost Link, which is, I guess, the name of the episode, Lost Link. Like, and it like I said, it's just like they're just wandering around trying to find a guy for the majority
and then
of the
nothing.
episode.
It's not like anything interesting
so
happens
boring
to him while he is gone. He doesn't discover anything about himself or about society. He's just gone wonking down the street. That's it.
Yeah, just killing some time, everybody, because we don't know. Like, there's nothing to do in this episode. So I'm also going to give it a 2.
Now, episode 5, I'm going to argue, and I don't know why, because structurally this is a much worse episode, but weirdly I think it's a slightly better episode. I don't know, because at least there's stuff happening, but only marginally so. So I'm going to give it a 2.5.
2.5 for Sort of Searching.
I just didn't like it. I didn't like this episode.
Here's the thing. I think we agree. Like, these are similar and they're bad, but they're bad in almost sort of different ways. Like, this one is overly packed with so much stuff that none of it matters or adds up. And like, it's the exact opposite problem of the last episode in some ways. I mean, same problem, that it's both boring. Yeah. Boring is the overall problem.
Yes, you're right. They're both
why
really
it's boring is different. This one was unwatchable. I'm giving it a 1. I'm giving it a 1.
You know what's funny? I don't know why I gave this a higher score, because as we talked about, I'm like, this is a worse episode.
It is a worse episode. I at least felt something for Link in the last episode. I felt nothing for the sewer kids. I felt nothing for Gina. I felt nothing for anyone.
You're right. You know what? Can I change my score?
Absolutely.
1.5.
1.5.
You're right. You're absolutely right. I changed my feelings. 1.5 out of 10. These are bad episodes.
Take that, Misfits.
Yeah. I mean, these were bad. These were bad episodes of television. Of again, a show that has shown it can be very whimsical and fun and sort of silly and hit on those fun sort of 1980s movies and TV show that are kind of just fun. And these are just not fun episodes. They're boring episodes, and we don't know enough about the characters, and we haven't learned to love them enough that the episodes can hang on their personalities. Like, Billy's not a charismatic enough character that you could just waste 45 minutes. And he'll come and be like, ain't I a stinker? No, you're not.
Yeah, nothing about this show is gelling. There's just no way of putting it. It's just, I couldn't tell you why they need to be Misfits of Science in order to do these plots. There doesn't appear to be a reason.
Right. Yeah, you're right, because it's the thing I said before. what is their lab and their group trying to accomplish? I don't know what their goal is, and that's a weird thing to be asking 5 episodes into the show. Like when you watch the X-Files, you know what Mulder and Scully are trying to accomplish. When you're watching Ghostbusters, you know what they're trying to accomplish. When you watch whatever, it's very clear. And this, it's like they're kind of just fumbling their way through things because they're misfits, I guess. It's just not good.
Yeah, it is so odd. And the thing is, like, when you're at Humanityne, when you're in that lab area, you get a sense of what this show is. It's like a goofy show where they're gonna have to like solve a weirdo guy's gonna show up, and they're gonna have to figure out like how to cure him or how to let him live his life with this weirdo power. But when you leave Humanityne, that's never the plot to the episode.
Right. Yeah, and we've had such disparate episodes. We've had them go into like Mayan temples. We've had this heist episode. We've had this, I'm gonna say, missing link episode, even though it's not what it is. It's just like they're so odd and so different. And again, as you said earlier, I don't know if they feel like they're from the same TV show.
I agree. Jordan, we've watched 5 episodes. That's 3 podcasts worth of Misfits of Science. Do you know what that means?
Oh, wow. We have to check and see what our score is.
We do have to check and see what our score is.
I forgot. Yeah. I forgot that's a thing we do on our own show.
It's because I think this season we hadn't had too many shows that have been at much jeopardy of us escape podding.
Yeah. Yeah. But our scores right now, we might have just done it.
Well, let me punch everything into the continued drag computer. I'm curious to see how this turns out because we came in pretty hot in that pilot, actually.
The pilot's a good pilot.
Yeah. So let's see what the computer says, Jordan. All right. Are you ready to hear what the average rating currently is for Misfits of Science?
Yeah.
It is 4.1.
Oh, we're going.
Get in that escape pod, Jordan.
Set off the alarm. You know what? I'm glad. These episodes were so bad. You know what? This show should go into the sewer and live like those dirty little children because it sucks.
Have we watched anything with a pilot that came in like that? A pilot that we thought was so good to like just a complete collapse this quickly?
No, we've seen shows like increasingly get worse, but I can't think of anything off the top of my head where was so dramatic how bad it got. Like this is bad. I'm glad. Usually I feel a little bit sad that we're not going to watch the whole thing. I don't even want to watch the last episode. These were terrible.
It's so funny. We have so many of these episodes theoretically to watch that I was like trying to figure out how I was going to do different segments for so many episodes and like how I was going to parse them out over all that time. And now all that work is for naught.
Well, I mean, look, we keep watching it, but I don't think either of us want to, do we? Let's just watch the last episode. Get out of here.
Let's load up that escape pod, buddy. We're going to come back next week. We're going to watch the final episode of Misfits of Science.
Thank goodness. And what number is that? How many episodes did they get through? About 13, 14 episodes?
Jordan, I don't know how to tell you this, but if we had watched this, we would have watched almost as much of this show as we did of Kolchak. There's almost as many episodes of this as Kolchak.
Oh yeah, we've got to get out. I don't think this show can redeem itself.
This is a disaster. I can't think of a show we've watched that has just been like fallen to space so badly so quickly.
Oh, I'm really excited. I'm glad we're taking the what do we call it? The shuttle
escape pod.
Shuttle
It's an escape pod.
The escape pod. That's right.
All right, Jordan. Well, that about wraps it up for this week. So if you, the listener, want to get a hold of us, you can email us at continuumdrag@gmail.com. And on Instagram and Twitter, we'll have clips from this week's episodes. There's going to be some dancing. There's going to be a clown exploding, I think.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one. Oh, do you think the scene works very well where she pulls the lady's zipper down? I mean, we didn't even see anything.
No, that's a good question. No, probably not.
Probably not.
You'll have to watch Misfits of Science for yourself to see that hilarious gag.
Oh, don't. Honestly, let me just say before we sign off, us describing this don't explain how bad these episodes are. Like, we sound like it's not terrible. These were terrible episodes.
Oh, I mean, I think we sound terrible too.
Okay, good. Okay. I want to make it clear. I don't want anyone to ever have to watch this.
All right. Well, listener, thank you for joining us this week. And Jordan, I will see you next week.
Finally, last episode. Continuum Drag is recorded in Toronto, Ontario. Theme music by James Rex Seidler. Produced by Jordan Dullock and Luke Black. Special thanks to Aaron Hughes.